Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on SOT therapy. And we're really excited today because we have done a couple of webinars on introducing SOT therapy, what it is. We've done an update webinar just with some of the sort of technicalities of it. And what we're really going to focus on today is our patient's experience with it. And so we've got a couple of patients who are going to be here with us live, Minda and Michael. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us and being willing to share your experience. And then we've got a couple of testimonials as well. Dr. Steph, do you have that testimonial handy from Brant?
I believe I do. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll see how much time there is and we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I am going to hand over to Dr. Steph. So we have about 40 or 45 minutes together today. And so we will spend maybe 15 minutes each talking to Minda and Michael. And then if there's time for questions at the end, if anyone has questions, then we can take some questions. So if you do have questions, maybe put them in either the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll try and sort of monitor that as well. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Steph, who does our SOT therapy at RestorMedicine. So take it from here, Dr. Steph.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, or thanks for listening to the recording if you happen to pop on after we do it live. But like Dr. Nicholas said, we've done a few webinars now, just explaining more on what SOT actually is. So if you're new to that, feel free to go back and listen to those. We also have a lot of information on our website that explains what it is and in the process. I've been administering all of the SOT at our office here. So we've had quite a few patients, and I always get the question from people, how are people doing on it? Is it making improvements? Is there progress? And I think it's really helpful for patients to hear from other patients sometimes and just get some real live feedback from people who have been through it and experienced it. So I'm so grateful for both Minda and Michael joining us today, two of our patients who have done SOT. So we're going to do just an informal little interview so you can hear their stories a bit. And I'm going to be asking them questions that a lot of patients ask me, so you can hear directly from our patients. So with that being said, let's just get right into it. So we'll start, Minda, if you want to start first and just give us a little bit of an intro into kind of your background. You don't have to, I know it always goes way in depth and there's so much to the Lyme story and how you got to where you are right now. But if you want to just give us a little intro to who you are, your experience with Lyme, and which treatments. We're going to try to keep this mostly focused on SOT, but just to give everyone an idea of what types of treatments you've done and used before you shifted into SOT therapy.
Sure, that's a great question. I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking, with an SOT focus, you still have to go back to the beginning to understand like why it's been important. So very briefly, since we all know that Lyme's complex and we've all usually been on this journey for more years than we'd like to admit, I believe I came down with Lyme in December of 2018, the December-January time. So I've been doing this for, what is that, about 5 years? I didn't know. I never saw a tick. I never had a rash. I had been to Rhode Island. I came home. I sort of had like weird flu-like symptoms and then arthritis. And I started seeing a doctor, but we didn't know what it was. No one really looks for Lyme in California, like right off the bat. If you come in with arthritis, they start checking for arthritis. And so it took me until about October of that year, so about 9 months, to finally, like, my symptoms were getting steadily worse and they were adding weirder symptoms, were adding in all the time until we hit about October. And luckily my doctor finally said, okay, now I think we start looking for weird stuff. We're going to test you for Lyme. And I went home that night and I Googled it and I went, well, I read like a primer on Lyme. That's exciting. Okay. So that was kind of how I got started with that. And by that time I had all kinds of interesting symptoms. I I have a lot of co-infections as well. At the time, it was probably Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella that were really dominant for me. A lot of my weird symptoms were Babesia related. And so that was kind of how it all started. And then I've been on and off very heavy antibiotics. They'll work for a time, but then it's really harsh on the gut. And then I'll go off them, I'll feel okay for a while, and then symptoms start cropping up. And so that was the story. Tried all kinds of different stuff, some herbals and all of them together, and did a lot of things until I thought, I'd reached the point where I believed I needed to start doing something even heavier than what I was doing. Like oral antibiotics didn't seem to be making enough of a difference. And I was either looking at doing like rather heavy, like antibiotic IVs to try and do something, or looking into other stuff like SOT. And that's kind of how I arrived at SOT.
Yeah, similar. I think a lot of patients have gone down the antibiotics and the herbs, and they help so much. And then you get to a point where it's still, okay, now what? What's next after you tried a lot of that stuff? So that's sort of how you landed on SOT. And now, how many SOT infusions have you had?
I've done 4. So I've done 2 strains of Borrelia and 2 strains of Bartonella. And so I started with my like highest Borrelia strain, partly because it's immunosuppressive and partly because we figured Lyme's probably one of my biggest infections. And I definitely had when I did the SOT that night, I had spine pain, which I'd never had before. And I was like, well, that's exciting. It's doing something new. And like, that was a good thing for me because I've tried a lot of different things and I don't usually have a large Herx reaction. So it's hard for me to know, like, I'll do something for 4 months and like, I don't even know if it's doing anything. Whereas when I did SOT, it was doing things. So that was exciting for me, even from the very beginning. Very briefly, it did seem to, like when I did the first Lyme SOT, it did seem to flare my Bartonella, really huge flare. So I had a bunch of Bartonella like symptoms kind of flare up, and then the next SOT I did was for Bartonella, and that kind of knocked the Bartonella symptoms back down to like a manageable level. And then I did another Lyme and Bartonella. So I did 2 strains of Lyme and 2 strains of Bartonella.
So all 4 were different infections, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is what I tell most patients who are wanting to get started with SOT is that because you have to target each infection so specifically and you go one at a time, you should be prepared to invest in more than one SOT, because most of the time, like Minda's saying in her experience, is that there's quite a few infections that come up positive. And because SOT is so targeted, you're going to likely need more than one target. So Minda did 4 different targets with the 4 SOT infusions that she's done. And you can repeat the same targets if necessary, but based on your lab results that we saw and your symptoms, that's kind of how we connected the pieces of, okay, let's do the kind of this order, and broke it down that way, like Minda had just explained. And it sounds like you noticed right away, kind of with the Borrelia, especially, you had something happen, right? Which is, even when you have die-off symptoms, it's sometimes exciting and a good thing because you know it's doing something. So that was Minda's experience sort of right away. And then I guess a lot of patients also ask me, how long does that usually last? Like, do you continue to have die-off symptoms for a long period of time after that? I guess now that you've done 4, Minda, what's your experience been with how long have these sort of flares lasted? And then how long does it take to also, if you've noticed any improvements in your symptoms? Oh no, Minda might be frozen. She dropped out. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Yeah, we'll give her a second to come back in.
She'll be back.
Hi, Dr. Stephanie. I was thinking I could tell you about my experiences with the Herxes.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, they typically, at the beginning when I started SOT, uh, it's a very slight Herx to start. Has been my experience. Slight headache, typical Herxy stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary for us Limeys, if you know what I mean. Um, and then it comes and goes is what I've noticed, but it is nothing really too major. When my really major herxing started is when I would be adding in like a lot of enzyme blends, biofibrin type stuff. Adding that with the SOT just really gets that herx going, knowing that something's happening, something's dying off. And sometimes even so much so that I had to break off the biofibrin a little bit, let my body detox, clear everything out, and then do it again. And that's when I was finding my biggest gains with SOT is pumping in, the enzymes.
Yeah, and great point. The enzymes, like Michael's mentioning, help with breaking up a lot of the biofilm. So it's now recommended even by the RGCC, the lab who makes the SOT, to add in biofilm busting agents because it makes the treatment more effective. And that's not unique to SOT, right? We usually add biofilm agents no matter what antimicrobial we're using, whether that's antibiotics or herbs or SOT. So Michael's explaining how the experience with taking those biofilm agents, it sounds like you made that infection more available and you were seeing that result of the SOT binding to that and killing it, and your experience the die off, and then some improvement after that as well. So, and then, oh, hi, Minda's back.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's some technical difficulties. Michael was filling us in on his experience with his die-off reactions, and we're talking about how, I know you said yours happened quite quickly. You noticed something happening, which, even though that's usually a good thing, even if you feel a little bit worse when you start a new therapy with Lyme, because it means that something's working. And then my question for you, which a lot of people ask me too, is how long do these Herc symptoms last? And then how long does it take for you to notice if things are changing or moving in a positive direction?
Yeah, so I would say that the first 2 weeks after SOT were pretty rough. Like, I would say they were the worst, but I would say generally how my experience with it, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but my experience was that it kind of took days off. So it would be one day would be bad, the next day would be okay. And it alternated every other day kind of for me. And I would sort of have like, in the very, like right after doing SOT, I'd kind of have like low level aches, super tired, like headaches. I usually always had a headache. But that would kind of go away after about like 2 weeks. But even so, like every other day would be much worse. Like, so one day would be a little bit lighter and I'd be more okay. And then the next day I'd just be really, really like beat down by it. And I would say it gradually tapered off over about the course of a month, I would say.
The thing, like the flaring
Yeah.
of your symptoms.
Yeah. So after an SOT, I would say I would kind of experience that for about like tapering in severity down for about a month. And then I didn't really so I knew they were doing things and I was really like excited about them. But I didn't really notice anything like shift significantly for me until I hit the third and fourth SOT.
Got it. That was going to be my other question was, did you notice improvements after like number one, number two? You've done 4 at this point. So it sounds like it took 2 up to like 3 or 4 to really notice a difference and symptom improvement for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I started noticing it after 3. And after 4, it's been a huge improvement for me. As with everything with Lyme, it's always complex, and I'm still not done with my journey, but I definitely have so much more energy than I did. This is the best I've felt in 5 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And on top of energy, any other symptoms that stand out to you that are like, wow, I'm not experiencing that anymore? Like, do you have a list of symptoms that have improved for you with your SOT?
For sure. So fatigue is one of the big ones because you know, like things come and go, and like symptoms pop up and disappear, and you're never really sure like what you're going to be dealing with. So I've one of the things like fatigue and neck and muscle and like shoulder pain were persistent for the last 5 years, and nothing touched them. Nothing I did made them better. Nothing made improvements in that at all. And I'm much improved from where I was when I started the SOT journey. And I've had some other things like crop up and disappear. You know, for a couple years, I didn't have hand joint pain in my hands for a while. That's kind of cropped up again for a moment. Who knows how long that's going to stick around, but it's not nearly as severe as it was in the beginning. But the shoulder pain and the fatigue are less than they were, and that's huge for me. So yeah, this is like having energy. I'm able to like go out and actually do things, and it's not at the cost of like the next 3 days are in a bath, in bed, like sick, tired, like, you know, so I can do things, and I don't pay for it by spending the next 2 days in bed. So it's amazing.
Yeah, that's everything. The fatigue can be so debilitating, and to be able to bounce back like that, not have to be sick for multiple days after you have one good day is a huge improvement. I'm so happy
Huge for me,
for
yes.
you that. Another big question I get is, have you done any other treatments alongside with SOT? Because a lot of people, I typically recommend, of course, being on the biofilm agents, like we discussed a little bit with Michael here, with every patient that I have on SOT. Other than that, any specific therapies you've been doing with it?
So I was doing ozone. There's like a waiting period like afterwards and before that you can't do treatments, but once the waiting period was over, I was doing ozone. I was doing bacillin shots. So I was doing a couple things lately. Well, and I should be doing the biofilm agents, but I'm bad at taking them. So to be honest, I don't. so this is my improvements without me being good at taking all the things I'm supposed to take. But yeah, so lately I haven't been doing much of anything. I'm not on a lot of supplements at the moment. I'm not doing ozone at the moment, and I'm still holding strong on a lot of my improvements. I'm not like backsliding in that way. So I'm not doing a lot right now. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm going from here, but we might be adding in a few more like herbs and things to like see if we can't like continue. But yeah.
And I think that's one of the big benefits of SOT as well, is you can get the infusion and you know it's doing its antimicrobial activity for the target you picked for up to 6 months, which when you're a Lyme patient and you have a long list of supplements and half of those supplements have to be taken at a certain time or away from these things or this meal or whatnot, I get it. It becomes a full-time job to manage your supplement list. So I think the big benefit with SOT is that you really don't have to think about it much after you do the one infusion. So that's really nice and a nice break. So, and yes, like Minda's saying, you can still have progress with just doing the SOT and focusing on that alone too. So although I recommend combining it with other things most of the time, it still has positive effects without doing that. And then Minda, have you retested your lab since doing any of the SOT infusions?
No, I haven't. I'd love to know. I'd love to know what they are, but $900 is kind of a lot for me to just retest out of curiosity at the moment. And so as much as I would love to know, I don't plan on doing it right now. I have other things that I'm planning to kind of pursue based on like what I'm experiencing and like symptom set wise, but I haven't retested, so I don't know what they are right now. All I can say is when I tested the first time, I had recently had COVID. So everything popped, and I had like whopping 37 different infections I tested positive for. So I'd love to know if at a slightly healthier place, if my immune system has more of a control on, like, I don't know, the bottom half of that list maybe. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, and labs, there's a time and a place for the lab testing. It's useful, but most importantly, if you're having symptom improvement, like that's the big thing. And I'm with you on kind of advocating some of those funds towards other treatments and just
Right.
continuing on. If it's not necessary to keep going with SOT at this time, or you're looking at other treatment options, that can be really useful to save the money for that instead of retesting if you're making progress. So
Yeah.
overall, do you feel that SOT was worth the investment? And if you had to make the decision again, would you go back and do it again, or would you opt for more SOT in the future if needed?
Yeah, I think for me, since the treatments last so long, I'm kind of waiting to see how the dust settles on everything. And I'm probably, because of how my story has gone, where a lot of stuff I've tried a lot of different treatments, and there have been persistent things that nothing has touched, but SOT has started to make a dent in. And for me, it's been, I would say, probably the most helpful thing I've done, just because it's been able to tackle things that I haven't been able to get at with all of my efforts over the last 5 years. And so I think it's been huge for me. I'm probably planning to retest in about, well, I'm probably planning to retest about a year from my first SOT date, because I kind of spread mine out a bit. So I'm thinking that's probably what my plan is. I'm a huge advocate of SOT for what it has done for me. So
Amazing.
definitely
Thank
worth it for
you.
me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think it's always helpful to hear everyone's different journey and as a patient, and be able to know that other people have used this and other people have benefited from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, let's circle back to you. I know we heard about your herxing a little bit, but let's go back before that. Give us a little introduction, the Spark Notes version of your experience with Lyme so far, and what sort of treatments you've tried and what kind of led you to SOT.
Sure. Well, I was bit by a tick. It was November 2011, so it's been a little while. I had the bullseye rash. I had the typical rash, but I only saw it like once, because then it turned into a big black bruise, and I kind of just pushed it aside. And then 6 months later, started getting sick, but never correlated the two. Started getting misdiagnosed, typical Lyme story from different doctors. And eventually found myself with an LMD that I trust. And we started going down which is Dr. Nicola, of course. And we started going down all the different avenues that we could go down at that time, treating Lyme. I tried antibiotics and every combination of antibiotics that there is, basically. All the supplements that you can think of, diet changes, which is huge. If people aren't doing diet changes, it's really a huge part of healing. Ozone therapy, essential oils. I think I tried everything on the internet. Double dapsone therapy. I have a Rife machine. I mean, when you want to talk to someone that's tried everything, I'm a pretty good candidate at this point. So I started down the road. I got sick, kept getting worse. Dr. Nicola would make me better, but it would just never quite cure me, if you know what I mean. And then a couple of years ago, for some reason, just all the symptoms just really started attacking me, and we started getting worse. So we started testing, and that's when you started doing SOT therapy. And so Dr. Nicola sent me your way, and it has been a blessing to this point. So,
yeah, you have truly tried it all.
I have.
You've done a lot of treatment and made a lot of progress, and then recent sort of relapse with a lot of your symptoms. So at this point, how many SOT infusions have you had, and which infections did you do them for?
I've had 2 infusions so far. The first one was for Bartonella, and we based that off of my symptoms. It was I talked, discussed both with you and Dr. Nicola what was going on with me. And the three of us decided that going after the symptoms was a better shot than the actual test base. Test showed a whole bunch of Borrelia, but we did the Bartonella, and it was the right choice. I started with 9 active infections from Vibrant, and then I did get retested, and now I'm down to 3 active infections. So I think the Bartonella, because of the symptoms, it was really holding me back, holding my immune system back. We're able to attack that. And now I'm in a completely different place than I was. So that was the first SOT. The second one, it was for anaplasma. And that one, we went solely off of testing. Got the blood test back, and the numbers were off the chart for anaplasma. So we attacked it with the SOT, and again, it's making a huge improvement. Huge improvement.
And yeah, now that you remind me of your journey with the SOT again, I remember because something with the testing, whatever, the lab requires to have a recent positive within the last 6 months to order SOT. So I remember, Michael, for you, that we had picked your first target and things were a little delayed for a bit, and then we ended up doing it, and then you were having great results with your first Bartonella infusion. So then when you're ready to do your second, your labs had expired, right? So then that was really the reason we retested. So for Michael, it was retesting sooner than we typically do. And I was so excited to see that your infections had dropped so much with that one SOT. So that's one of the possibilities, is when you do a target for one infection, is that you can clear up some of the other ones because you lighten that chronic infection load, and then your immune system can work a little bit better and sometimes clear out the other things. So retesting for you, Michael, I think gave us a really clear second target, right? Like that one popped up, and there was no doubt that we were going to pick that one based on how the results came back. And then herxing wise, I know for you, you mentioned earlier, it was manageable. How long did it last for you again? Well, because the other thing, just before you go and expand on that, was patients ask me all the time, like, how bad is it going to be? Like, I think everyone's a little concerned that it's going to be like unbearable, and not sure for how long it lasts. And then the concern with SOT, of course, is you can't change the dosing. So once you've done the infusion, it's just going to go do its thing. So if you can just speak to like the severity of it, and if there were things you used or did that also helped with that, because I think the big concern is also that it's going to be too intense, and people get nervous to herx that much, understandably.
Right. No, my herxing, it wasn't as extreme as I've had in the past taking antibiotics. Because then with the herxing, you also get the side effects of the antibiotics. So it makes it kind of, washy there. The first couple of weeks is definitely the toughest. It's not, for me, it wasn't as bad as I've had in the past. I would say more of a mid-herx. You're not feeling good. You're not feeling great. Let's be clear about that. But it's not as bad, and you can start feeling, for me, within the first couple of days, I could feel things changing inside of me to where you knew something was happening, and it was for the better instead of the worst. Typically, when you get Lyme, every day, it's almost like just a tiny bit you get worse. The slightest bit where you almost can't even tell, but when you look back a couple of weeks, you're like, wow, I'm even worse than I was. With SOT, it's the opposite. Every day you look back, you're like, wow, I'm a little better than I was yesterday. And then 3 weeks in, you look back and go, wow, I'm a lot better than I was 3 weeks ago. Now, granted, I don't wake up and go, oh, I feel great. But when you give it perspective, there's a huge difference. And so, there was times where I couldn't work 2 days in a row. My body would just fall apart. And I think for the last 3 weeks, I've worked every single day, almost 7 days a week, pushing my body, and it's enjoying it, instead of me having to run to bed, fall asleep for a week to recover. I mean, things are really looking up.
Yeah, that's a huge improvement. And I think it's helpful that how you compared your experience with taking antibiotics, and the die-off reactions from that versus the SOT die-off reactions. in your experience, at least anyways, is kind of helpful for maybe some patients who have tried the antibiotics and are trying to compare with how they might feel if they do try SOT also.
And Dr. Steph, I just want to interject there. I mean, we need to also recognize that Michael's done 2 months of the double dose dapsone protocol. Like, you know, he knows what tough treatment is, and he knows what tough herxing is.
So true.
And that's a very, very aggressive protocol. And he didn't get any more improvement from that than he's getting from the SOT, which is a lot more gentle on the body and a lot less side effects. And, you know, its safety profile is really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Like, I think sometimes because with Lyme, like a lot of the treatments are so aggressive, and there's a time and a place for all of that stuff, of course. But I think the real concern is, okay, what are the other side effects that are possible just from that treatment alone? And like Dr. Nicholas said, SOT really does have a high safety profile where those SOT molecules really are not even recognized by your body. They're so small and targeted at the infection that they're less likely to cause some of those other harder symptoms. So yes, Michael, that you are a great person to speak to your experience on some of those more aggressive protocols versus the SOT. So I think that's really helpful. It sounds like energy's been a huge improvement for you. Any other standout symptoms that have gotten better since your SOT infusions?
Well, right when I did the Bartonella SOT, my Bartonella symptoms just seemed to go away. It took a couple of weeks and they slowly just diminished. The main one, just right off the bat, is the bottom of your feet, walking on broken glass. Every footstep hurts. Extremely painful. And I had that for many, many years, almost 10 years of us trying to knock that down. And within 3 to 4 weeks of the Bartonella SOT, completely gone.
Wow, that's quick.
Even today, I was on a walk this morning actually, and purposely feeling my feet walking and feeling the actual texture of the ground. And before that, I couldn't do that. It was just so painful, and the nerves were just not very happy. And just to show that what happened with the Bartonella. With the anaplasma, and again, there was other things, pains in the back, there was depression issues, some mental stuff going on with the Bartonella, which all got better with the SOT. But then we did the anaplasma, and all of my muscles were the main thing that got better on that one. Those were the ones where I could only work for maybe a half a day to a day, and I would just be so worn down, my body. I could hardly walk. And we didn't know what it was. I mean, there's so many, Lyme is so complex. You have no idea, it's very difficult. But I noticed right away that I was able to work 1 to 2 days in a row. And then almost overnight, within a week or two, I could work almost as much as I wanted to work. It wasn't my body holding me back anymore. It was me actually deciding what was good for me to work or not. And so both of them have shown big changes in me from each SOT that I've done so far. And I like to, when I did the Bartonella, I really wanted to attack the Bartonella as much as I could. I didn't just use the SOT. I'm sure you'll have a question for me on that in a minute.
That was my next question for you. Besides the enzymes that you mentioned, talk to us about the other treatments that you used alongside while you had after the infusion.
Sure. Well, I stuck with all my typical supplements that I've been using. And when you've had co-infections in Lyme as long as I have, you understand what your base supplements are to make you feel good and help your body get through. But sometimes you still get Lyme brain and you kind of, you get lost at times. Continue with the question for me again, because again.
Yeah.
Oh, what I continued doing. See, Lyme brain. See, everyone out there is going to understand what just happened. So with the Bartonella SOT, I went after it with supplements. I went after it with antibiotics. I went after it with enzymes. And of course, diet and all that kind of stuff. I never changed any of that. I stuck with the same protocols I'd been using to attack Lyme and Bartonella, but I just added the SOT as another tool, basically. And that's where I think I've been getting a lot of improvement, is I haven't really been taking it to just feel better and get through. I take it, and then when I do feel better, I kind of push myself a little more. Let's see if I can feel even better. Let's see if I can, add a certain supplement and make it feel better. Let me see if I can add some more enzymes and see if I can herx a little bit. And it's weird that we use that term, but we look for herxing as a clue that we're getting better. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is when I start herxing. And then when I do start herxing too bad, I lay off and let my body reset, detox everything out, and then start over again.
Yeah, and I think the detox support is a really big piece with this too, and making sure that when you're killing infection, you're able to clear it out, because that's where a lot of those die-off symptoms come from too. Just out of curiosity, and for maybe other people listening too, what is your top like support supplements that you use? Are you on glutathione, phosphatidylcholine, binders, that sort of stuff? What's worked for you?
Well, I've been on glutathione since day one. You ever come see Dr. Nicola, you're going to be on it from day one.
It's a good one.
Right. All the vitamins, C, D, E, zinc, B, magnesium, potassium, all the stuff to help support muscles, to help support, again, glutathione with detox. The enzymes I've been on for a while. That's about it. I also add other things for digestive issues, a lot of probiotics. Just getting my gut to feel better from all the years of antibiotics. So I'm throwing in all the probiotics to, again, one of the good things about SOT is I can jump off of antibiotics, fix my gut, and I'm still getting better. It's not like you put on hold your recovery. You're still getting better. So SOT is very, it's different than all the other options.
Yeah. And like you're saying, I love that it combines so well with other treatments, because it's like you can take a break from that. It's still in the background doing the work, even if you pause on some of those other things. So for you, Michael, overall, was the SOT investment worth it? Would you do it again? Are you planning on doing future infusions with SOT?
Yeah, I'm planning on doing another one. From the very beginning, we actually were thinking of focusing on Borrelia. And every time we went to go that route, something kind of pulled us in a different direction. Then we went Bartonella on one, and then we were going to go Borrelia again, and we went Anaplasma on the second one. Third time's a charm. We're going Borrelia on the next one, I'm hoping. When my test results came back, 2 of the strains that I had left were Borrelia, and one of them was the Anaplasma. We just did the Anaplasma. So logically, let's go after the Borrelia. And when I put my symptom list together, it seems to all be Borrelia symptoms. There's no randoms. There's like, what's that? Why is that? Every time I put it in on the list, it's, wow, that looks like Lyme to me. So I will be going with another SOT. It'll be Borrelia based. And then I'll test after that, I'm assuming, and see where I'm at.
Yeah. It's so important to connect the labs with the symptoms. And I mean, although the SOT requires you to have that positive test result to be able to order it, I think it's just important to piece it all together, of course, and not only rely on the labs and use the symptoms to kind of put the whole picture together. Well, thank you, Michael, so much for sharing your experience as well. Any other final thoughts on SOT from either Minda or Michael? Just wrapping up on sharing your experiences here. No, we heard it.
Well, I if anyone is listening, the whole reason they're listening really is they want to know if it's worth it or not.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. Coming from a decade-long Lyme with plenty of co-infections, done all the treatments. You want to know, is it worth the money? It's really what it comes down to. And from my perspective, the answer is yes, hands down. You can ask my friends, my family. I'm starting to come alive again. Just feeling decent is such a godsend when you've been in, felt horrible for as long as I did. So if I was out there wondering, should I try it? My recommendation is absolutely give it a try. Get a hold of your doctors, your LMDs. We've got 2 great ones that are on this webinar. Team up with them, because you need a team when you fight this kind of stuff. And go after it with every tool that you can. And SOT right now seems to be the best tool we have in the toolbox.
Thanks, Michael.
I would say the
You're
only
welcome.
thing I have to add to that is the other thing that I needed when I was in the middle of it's not working, nothing's working, like, is I wanted to hear that some people somewhere were getting better. Because you just don't hear a lot of stories about people actually making improvements and actually like getting better and getting pieces of themselves and their lives back. And even though I'm not done with this journey, I have pieces of myself back. I worked out for the first time in 5 years, and I didn't spend any time in the bath in the next few days. Like I'm doing projects outside. I'm going on hikes. I'm as Michael says, I'm coming back to life. And for me, I think a huge piece of it is the hope that you definitely can get better. Some people are getting better, and it may not be the end of the story. We might still be on this journey. We still have Lyme brain sometimes.
We do.
But it's progress, and it's meaningful progress. It's not like a temporary, like, oh, maybe I'm better and then tomorrow I'm worse again. Like, it's meaningful progress. And like there really is hope that this is like the start of a really huge like change for me on a track to actually healing and putting this in remission for good. So yeah.
Thanks, Minda. Thank you both so much for joining us. I appreciate you for being here and for trusting me and Dr. Nicola with this whole SOT process as well, since it's been new to RestorMedicine in this last year. So thank you both so much. And thanks for being here. And then we have one written testimonial from another one of our patients who's been doing SOT. So I just want to kind of wrap it up by reading that to you guys. So you have a third person to just give their little brief summary here. So this is from our patient. He said, I've had 2 SOT infusions. The first was for Bartonella vinsoni. Prior to the infusion, I had very high antigen levels for this co-infection. Having treated it for years with antibiotics and other means, I was also taking herbal remedies and doing Epsom salt baths every few days to deal with the remaining infection. Dr. Stephanie answered all my questions and made the whole process very easy and enjoyable. After the infusion, I went through a few weeks of mild but manageable herxing every few days or so, which gradually tapered off. About 3 months in, much to my surprise, I noticed I was no longer needing to take any herbal remedies or do the baths. 6 months after the infusion, the same test indicated the level of Bartonella vinsoni was almost non-existent. Based on the success of the first SOT and hoping to arrest the intensifying neuropathy in my feet and legs, I took a second one for Borrelia burgdorferi. Again, I went through a period of mild but manageable herxing, which quite quickly tapered off. I'm not as sure about the results of this infusion since I have not had the blood test since. Neuropathy is still intensifying and hasn't improved, but it's possible that there's another cause and it's not the infection, and that the Borrelia burgdorferi is no longer the problem. In any case, I'm glad I took these 2 SOTs. I believe the technology, though relatively expensive, is probably less expensive in the long run than long-term treatment for these chronic infections. And I have nothing but the highest praise for the warm, professional, supportive staff at RestorMedicine. So thank you to our wonderful patient who also provided this testimonial for us based on his experience. And overall, it sounds like the consensus for you 3 has been mild but manageable herxing, gradual improvement, and that you've been happy to invest in the therapy, and it's made some really incredible changes for you all. So Thank you to our patients for sharing their experience. And if you are interested in SOT therapy or have any other questions about it or want to get scheduled, the next step is to have a consultation with me where we can discuss your symptoms. And if you have recent labs, it's even better if you can bring that to that appointment so we can connect all the dots and help you get started on SOT. So reach out to our office if you have any other questions. I'm going to hand it just back over to Dr. Nicola to wrap everything up. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steph. And yeah, again, thank you to Michael and Minda and our other wonderful patient for providing that testimonial. So yeah, I mean, we continue to be super excited about SOT. We're very, we try to present just a very realistic kind of account of it. Obviously Lyme is complex and all these co-infections and all the bits and pieces. So SOT is showing definite promise. We're really, really pleased that we brought it in at Restore. And yeah, so I just thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I hope this was helpful for you. And like I said, if you're interested in getting started with SOT, you can reach out to us at RestorMedicine, info@restoremedicine.com, or our phone number is 619-546-4065. And yeah, if you missed the first two webinars we did on SOT, you will find them on YouTube. If you search my name on YouTube and SOT, you will find them there. So thank you, everybody. And thank you for being here and being willing to share your story. Thank you, Dr. Steph, for all the work you've put in, getting SOT up and running at Restore. Really appreciate that. And to all of you listening, yeah, I hope this has been helpful. Let us know if you have any other questions. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.